In my last GTA review, I covered GTA Advance, an obscure and completely forgotten entry in the GTA series that's only really notable for being the single Nintendo exclusive title in the series. I was not very kind to it, and called it one of the worst GTA games ever. I did receive some comments from fans of the game, much to my surprise, and they were in defense of the game, but I still stand by my statements. It was an admirable effort to put a GTA game on a handheld system like that, but it really didn't work out in the long run. GTA Advance was a huge flop, largely due to it sharing a release date with San Andreas, and critical reception was rather mixed. Because of all this, GTA Advance is the least known GTA game of the entire series, and in my opinion, one of the worst GTA games ever made. But it gets worse. Way worse. Back in 1999 and 2000, a little company known as Tarantula Studios ported the first GTA games onto the Game Boy Color. Yes, you did hear that correctly. A system with the same power as the NES had GTA games on them. Considering the hardware limitations of the GBC, these ports were heavily watered down. They did maintain most of the missions in all the cities, surprisingly enough, but many sacrifices had to be made for these ports to even exist. How did these Game Boy Color ports pan out? I'm just gonna cut to the chase and say that these are some of the worst games I have ever played. It's an abysmal experience through and through, and I'm going to show you exactly why. Let's start off with GTA 1. The GBC version of GTA 1 features all three cities from the PC and PlayStation versions, which admittedly is extremely impressive for a Game Boy Color game. I have to applaud Tarantula Studios, now known as Rockstar Lincoln, for their efforts in bringing these three cities to the handheld system. Unfortunately, I'll only be showing footage from Liberty City. I tried doing some level cheats to unlock the other two cities, but none of them worked. Oh well, the less of this game you see, the better. One thing that surprised me going to this game is how good the controls are. They aren't good by any means, but it actually works. Getting into cars takes some time since you have to press the B and select button at the same time, but I'm not complaining. The GBC had very few buttons, so it works perfectly fine for the standards of the console. Exploring Liberty City in this port was a really weird experience for many reasons. Due to console limitations, this city is a fucking ghost town. Cars and pedestrians will rarely spawn, and there was one case of me walking down a highway with hardly a single soul in sight. It's honestly quite terrifying. Not helping this is the abysmal music playing in the background. I had to play this game with the headphones off because it was seriously giving me a headache. GTA 1 had a brilliant soundtrack, and even though it's more than impossible for them to bring that to the GBC, they could have done a much better job on these compositions. Also, if you are looking for having a good old-fashioned rampage, look elsewhere. Aside from there hardly being a soul walking these streets, this is another case of a GTA game having the dreaded T rating. There isn't a single drop of blood in this game. It's understandable considering how prudish Nintendo was at the time, but still, you'd get more enjoyment killing cockroaches than rampaging in this game will ever be. Also, due to hardware limitations, burping and farting are not present in this game, so if you're a fart fetishist, play the console and PC versions instead. GTA 1 for the Game Boy Color is a really bad game, but in spite of that, I can't really be that angry about it. I was expecting to go into this AVGN style, but I ended up empty. Sure, this game is a piece of shit, but it is also pretty impressive due to the fact they managed to fit this game on the GBC. It's still really bad, and they shouldn't have even bothered making this port, but I can't really get angry about it. Nonetheless, I recommend you avoid this port even out of sheer curiosity. The GBC port of GTA 1 gets a 2 out of 10. It is easily the worst GTA game in existence. But I got exactly what I expected from a GBC GTA. so I don't feel disappointed in the slightest. Now it's time to move on to GTA 2. Grand Theft Auto 2 is, in my opinion, both better and worse than the original. Better in the fact that it's more polished than GTA 1 and actually plays halfway decently, but worse due to the fact that, at least on the PS1, it's censored and features very little blood or swearing, which is like having a Call of Duty game where the only weapons are Nerf guns, but who knows, that might actually happen someday. GTA 2 also got a GBC port in 2000. I didn't play this one as much as the previous port, but I will say they did a better job this time. Mostly, that is. There are more cars and peds on the street, so stealing cars and causing mayhem is much easier. The presentation is improved, and the music is actually quite good. I'm impressed! But it also has some flaws that even the first GBC port didn't have. Getting into cars is much harder, and the controls have been switched around to A+ select instead of B+ select. Why? Cars control worse, the frame rate is worse, and most baffling of all, there is no wanted level on the heads-up display, so you'll have no idea whether or not the cops are onto you or not. But despite that, it's definitely a better game than the last Game Boy Color port. I could actually see this being a decent time waster on a car trip or a bus ride, you know, if it was still the early 2000s, but still, there was noticeably more effort put into this port. GTA 2 on the GBC gets a 2.5 out of 10. Still really bad, but at least it's better than the last game. GTA 1 and 2 are rarely acknowledged, which is the equivalent of people not acknowledging the first Super Mario Bros. Then again, the first GTA game was only really mildly successful, whereas Super Mario Bros. Was a hit from the start. And on the GBC, nobody bought GTA 1 and 2, except for me. Yeah, I actually had GTA 1 on the Game Boy Color as a kid for a brief period, but I ended up losing it. Not like I was missing much. These games are atrocious, and make the main versions of GTA 1 and 2 look like San Andreas in comparison. I'll always have a soft spot for the first couple of GTA games in spite of their flaws, but not these ports. These versions should have never came into fruition despite being impressive.